Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, and welcome to Command Power, the show in which we discuss all things Magic the Gathering with a focus on Commander. And today we have a brand new episode in our card spotlight series in which I look at a card that I feel is underplayed or underappreciated in Commander and discuss its merits. But before we do that, just a quick reminder to please click subscribe if you enjoy these videos. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me, and we're currently growing the channel and it helps me a lot. Much appreciated. And today we're going to be talking about some new cards from the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth. And the card we're going to be looking at today is the One Ring. For 4 colorless, it's a legendary artifact with indestructible, and when the One Ring enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring, and tap, put a burden counter on the One Ring, then draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. Well, they obviously need to do something pretty impressive for the One Ring, and this is definitely pretty cool and impressive. So right off the bat, this is going to draw you a ton of cards, but it's also going to cost you a ton of life, which is super flavorful because the One Ring obviously has that effect on people, right? It frays at their sanity, it breaks them down little by little, more and more until they succumb. So this fits beautifully with that flavor. And also, since the life loss is tied to the upkeep and not to you activating the ability, you can't just not activate it in order to not take the life. You're going to be taking that life every single turn, whether you use the ring or not, which pushes you to use it, but if you use it, then it gets more counters, which is very interesting design. That being said, this is going to work super well in certain decks. The first part of the ability, which gives you protection from everything, is really sweet if you're playing it in a deck where you can give it flash, so that you can play it at any time during your opponent's turn and suddenly not take a ton of damage. This makes it act like a really sweet kind of fog effect. Obviously, it's still really sweet without that, because you can still dissuade people from attacking you, but then they can just go somewhere else. If you give it flash, you're actually making them waste an entire attack step, which is very powerful. It also stops you being blown out by certain spells that they might be able to cast at instant speed. If you play this during your turn and then they respond with whatever it is targeting you, then you're going to get hit anyway, which is pretty unfortunate. Now, it has that clause that says if you cast it, and I'm really glad it does, because otherwise this would be incredibly obnoxious in blink decks, because they could just flicker this over and over and over, and then you're basically never going to be able to attack that player, which is really, really powerful. But the meat of the card are the other 2 abilities. Now, the first deck that this is going to be very good is any deck that is a life gain deck. So in a deck that's gaining a bunch of life every turn, say something like Oloro or Trostani, then this is going to be really good, because you're going to be negating most of that damage that you're taking with this, which is very solid. But it's not only that, this can also be incredibly synergistic in a deck that is looking to lose life, such as Willow Dusk, which is a deck I'm currently building. This is going to be really, really great in that deck, because you're going to guarantee that you're taking a bunch of life every turn, and you're losing that life not for nothing, but to draw a bunch of cards. So that's really, really solid. You're doing something that you want to be doing anyway, which is filling up your hand, and then you're losing life, which synergizes with your deck. So that's really great in any deck that revolves around losing life. But there's even more ways that this could be interesting. You could obviously proliferate it, but if you proliferate it, you're going to be taking a bunch more damage. So the interesting thing to do is to lose the life first in the upkeep, proliferate a bunch, and then try to get rid of this somehow if you don't want to take that much life. And that's quite a bit of work, but there are decks that can kind of manipulate the counters on this in a very effective way. So a deck that I think could do this quite well would be a Gleesa Sunslayer deck, where you're running a bunch of proliferate effects anyway, so you can pump up the counters, draw the cards, and then use Gleesa's trigger to remove 3 counters from it, thus saving yourself 3 life during the next upkeep. That's a bit convoluted, and definitely the easiest way to use this is in a life gain deck, but it is an option to be had. Another interesting thing that you could do with this card is bounce it to your hand. If you're playing something like Master of Ethereum or Esper Zoa, you can return this to your hand, thus being able to get the ETB trigger again, which is incredibly solid, and you can reset the counters when it starts to be too much damage. So this is going to work pretty well in a deck that is looking to bounce artifacts to hand, and there are quite a few decks that are interested in doing stuff like that. So overall, I think this is an incredibly powerful card that is going to slot into quite a few decks, but thankfully it's not so universally good that it should go in every deck. Though that being said, it's clearly going to be a chase card, and it's going to be pretty expensive, so you better be ready to fork out some cash if you want to get the One Ring. So there you have it. That has been our card spotlight for today. What are your thoughts on this card? Let me know in the comment section below. I read all comments and respond to all of them too. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click like or subscribe. It really helps the channel. And until next time, take care. Woo!